So if there is something you want to listen to again, or if you missed something, or if you want to share with a colleague, you're more than welcome to do it. The recording will be sent to you later today. Please mute yourself in between talking. You're more than welcome to ask questions at any time. We want this to be interactive, but if you could mute yourself in between, that way we don't have a lot of background noise, kids playing, dogs barking, all that kind of good stuff. If you're having trouble hearing us for any reason, I highly recommend phone audio. There's some call-in instructions versus your computer audio. If you can hear us fine on your computer, no need to change. That's just my recommendation. And again, with questions, we definitely want this to be as interactive as possible. Oh, second here. So feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask a question audibly, or you can type into the chat box. Either way works to ask a question of Paul or myself. So a little bit about the Washington Center for Women in Business. What are we? Why are we here? We are funded by the Small Business Administration. Hold on one second. Got some noise there. We're funded in part by the SBA, and our whole goal is to help women who either want to start a business or if they're already in business, how can we help them be more successful? How can we help bridge any knowledge gaps or skill barriers? And even though we are a women's business center, I know we have men on the line right now, and we help all small businesses. So don't be intimidated by the name. We are always welcoming you to workshops as well as one-on-one business coaching. On the screen, you can see just a couple of the areas that we focus on. Really, whatever's paining you in your business, we want to help with that. We do online trainings like this one, and also in-person workshops on a variety of topics. But then, like I mentioned, a lot of one-on-one coaching. So today we'll be kind of talking in generalities of what people can do. But when it comes to the business coaching, it's business advising and knowledge building and skills building pertaining specifically to where you are in business. We cover the whole state of Washington. The first time to meet with us one-on-one is free. It's $25 per hour session after that. There are scholarships available, though, if that $25 is a barrier for you right now in your business. And my name is Tracy Hansen. My contact information is on the screen right now, as well as our business coach who you meet with one-on-one, or Ryan if you want to use him to schedule. And I'm going to just leave this up really briefly. Here's some of our upcoming webinars as well as in-person workshops. And with that, I'm going to bring it over to you, Paul. 1 second. All right.
There I am.
See Paul.
Hi, everybody. Paul Edwards. This is the presentation, Marketing Intentionally. I've been working on this for many years. And in this seminar, what I'm going to teach you about today is how to market yourself intentionally without wasting time or money or energy. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today, so just stay with me on this. You'll see me go through the slides here. If this is working, it might not be. There we go. Okay, so here's what you're going to learn. Number one is becoming what I call a social professional. That's really just a fancy way of saying somebody who is becoming an emblem of their company and of a personal brand and all that within your sphere of influence. And it could be online, or it could be in your local community, or it could be both. We're going to cover how to become top of mind for people. That is, when they think of what it is you do, they associate it with you. That's a very important aspect of it. We're going to cover how to establish pathways to continual referrals. And we're also going to cover how to distinguish yourself from your peers. So all those topics are going to be in there. But for a lot of you, this may not be the first webinar or seminar you've ever attended on marketing. And what I want to say is if you've been to stuff like this in the past and it hasn't worked, or it it's failed, or you've gone back and tried it maybe for 2 days and that kind of thing, don't feel bad. This is all stuff that I learned by making mistakes, and really throughout the entire process, the only reason I got better at it was because I made fewer and fewer mistakes. We don't exactly live, though, in a society where information is a scarcity. What the problem is, we lack interpretation of the information. So I get bombarded with ads all the time because I'm in business for people to teach me how to do this, and I do what everybody else does, which is I just yeah. I've heard all this before. Teach me something specific, and that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to attempt to avoid just the generalities and the hackneyed stuff that you've heard before, and I'm going to give you some very specific stories and examples that point to the content of what I offer as the solution to your problem. So if you've ever felt like you can't succeed in marketing, I want to put those fears to rest, because I like to say that if you get the right person giving you the right information at the right time in the right place for the right reasons, everything changes. And really what I've found is I'm borrowing a lot of what I teach from universal principles, the laws of the universe, if you want to call it that. And so it is the right information. And I have 6 years experience in this. I'm the right person to do it. It's the right time. You're tuned in, or you're watching this whenever you get a chance. And it's the right reasons. We all want to succeed. And so with that in mind, I want to also address some of the difficulties people have faced. Marketing firms, for example, want big bucks for this, and they don't always give you the right advice. Let's just be honest about that. Advertising is extremely expensive, and entrepreneurs always face the annoying reality that for every one person who wants to buy from you, you got 100 who want to sell you something. In our society and our marketplace culture, there's a lot of pressure people feel to be an overnight success. If you've ever felt like that there are forces that actually almost seem to want you to fail, you're probably right. And on top of that, they want to charge you for it. And I think that's just not appropriate, and I'm here to tell you they're wrong. And they have no business judging your success or your potential, much less charging you for it. So what we're here to do today is to encourage your dream through methods that are available to all of us. I want to show you how to make that happen, and we're here to start projecting your dream into the marketplace at little to no cost, certainly none from me. All I'm asking for is, if you like what you hear and you want to learn more, register into my 6-week free masterclass, which I'm going to offer at the end of this. And if that works for you, then I'd like to request a testimonial, but that's it. Moving right along, I have some goals for you on this webinar, and they are to help new entrepreneurs begin marketing successfully. So if you're new in business, that's what I want you to get out of this, is you learn to do things the right way the first time, so you don't have to go through the heartache that I did. If you're a more experienced entrepreneur, a veteran, you've been around for a while, you've been in business, 10 years, 15 years, whatever the case may be, then I just want to add something to your toolkit. I want to refresh something that maybe you've forgotten about, remind you of a truth that is vital. Very often that's what happens is we get into a busy period and we forget to do the fundamentals, the things that we know will bring us success. And I want to bring those back to your mind so that you get back into doing them. So those are my goals for you on this webinar. My goal from this webinar is for you to understand that the only way you succeed in marketing, specifically in networking and relationships and all that, is through doing it intentionally. And secondly, the only way you really learn to do that is by actually doing it. You can set up all the elaborate rehearsals you want to, but real life is real life. You actually have to do it. And the best way to learn to do that is through my 6-week masterclass, because it comes from 6 years of literal on-the-job, on-the-ground, real-life experience. So that's my goals out of this webinar. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about how I got here.
And let me just interrupt you 1 second. Yes, we just got a question. The slides will be sent out to you as well as the recording. So no need to write down everything on the screen.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So how did I get here? I like to say I failed my way into getting better at not making the same mistakes over and over again. I started networking in 2013, really, and the first thing I found was that people were kind of put off by me being, salesy, high pressure, always wanting to talk about insurance, which has its own stereotype in the culture now. But along the way here, what happened was I kept. I don't believe that the unexamined life is worth living. So as these things happened, I kept saying, okay, why did that person not respond positively? Why did that person kind of avoid me? Why did that person say, I don't want to talk about that? Why did some people preempt me from talking by saying, no, I'm already happy with who I have and I don't want to switch? And what I found, every time I applied myself to thinking about that and reviewing it and considering it and attempting to consider it from the other person's point of view, I started to think of more proactive ways to meet people and to add value to them and to connect them. Right? I started thinking, okay, when people think about insurance, I want them to think about Paul Edwards. But when people think about Paul Edwards, I don't necessarily want them to think about insurance. And I hope that gives you a little bit of a clue as to what I'm talking about. The other thing that happened here inadvertently was I kept stumbling. I kept doing things to prepare myself for roles that are really in my wheelhouse, like doing a webinar, like public speaking and presenting and teaching and writing. And that's my background. That's my skill set. And networking gave me opportunities to do that. I'll tell you some stories coming up about what that involved. And it all really came to a head the day that somebody endorsed me. I was in charge of a leads group with the Lacey Chamber of Commerce. And my good friend Alan Shimamoto was in the group. And I was talking about ways to add value to the networking group. And he suddenly blurted out, you should really do a presentation on networking and branding and marketing yourself. And that had never occurred to me, but as soon as he suggested it, I said, yeah, actually that is a very good idea. I should do that. And I did. And so what you're looking at now is a new edition of that presentation, which is being expanded and multiplied to create extra value for the person who chooses to buy in and learn more about it. Excuse me while I get a little sip here of water. Parched throats are no good on webinars. Okay, so someone endorsed me. A little bit of the background is I'm a born communicator. I was raised by my parents' 30-year advertising executive for my dad, and my mom was an artist. So I grew up on presentation and speaking and writing and performance, and all of that stuff was primo real estate in my household. I even studied it at Pacific Lutheran University. That's where I went and got my degree in communications and PR and advertising. But I got sidetracked. I came out of it and I thought, okay, I'm going to go straight into what I really want to do, which is radio. And that didn't work. And neither did any other media job that I got or any sales effort that I attempted to make. It just all dried up, and I had to find work somewhere, and so I went into insurance. I didn't really know anything about insurance. I didn't know how much it would dovetail with what I had studied in college and what I was born to do. But it actually proved the perfect vehicle for me to brand myself as opposed to the product. And so that's what I've spent the last 6 years doing. And as you see in the next bullet there, I pretty much created my own style of selling and attracting new business. Using my real skill set in a position I never thought you would use it for. And you'll see examples of this if you begin to follow me on social media and all that, and you see what I get up to in terms of extracurricular activities that associate with what I do for business. And in all of that, I thought I was supposed to go out and become a radio announcer, a news reader, a talk show host, something like that. Turns out the real calling is for me to share my accumulated knowledge in an effective manner that helps people not give up, that helps people, realize there's hope, especially in business, but in other areas of life as well. And I think that's probably the best gift you can give someone is another shot at something that they're feeling like giving up on or feeling like it isn't working. So getting here for me has been a little bit like when John Lennon said that life is what happens while we're making other plans. I had a journey that I thought I was on, and then there was the journey that I was really on. So now you could be in any type of business, but especially if you're starting up or new, you have a choice. You can remain in your office or your retail location or wherever you do business out of your home, and you can make cold calls, right? And I'm not here to attack cold calling. I know people who do it, and they're very good at it. It's a skill, it's a science, and it's wonderful. It'll get you business. And if you're a highly trained salesperson, you could probably survive on that. What I've found, though, with most entrepreneurs I know is that most of them are not highly trained salespeople. They're decent salespeople. They're passionate about what they offer, but they're not highly trained salespeople. And you add that to the fact that when you're starting up, especially in business, it's Murphy's Law, and you've got something's going to come up that is like what I call a stop before you start price tag. Something's going to come up that's just going to take all your money or all your time or all of both of those and make you give up before you even get started. And the problem is that you can't really control when or how or what that is. All you can do is either be in a position to respond to it without sacrificing your livelihood, your business, whatever momentum you have, or you're forced to react to it. And it's no different if you're in the nonprofit or charitable industry either. $100 donations from Aunt Selma just aren't going to cut the mustard. You need to figure out how to get that thing going, and you need to have a baseline to operate and expand and scale up from. So if you don't have control over these, networking and branding offers you a really solid backstop against that. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. As I've moved towards writing books, right, I have had one obstacle after another, like a giant, like a whack-a-mole, right? It's just, now you got to pay for this, now you got to pay for that, now you got to pay for this. Now I don't have the money for this. But because of the connections I have, because of the network that I have, because of all the people that I know and all of the resources that I have seen one of these just get one after another, and it falls down, and I've been able to reduce the cost to a statistical zero. So I don't feel like I can't overcome those problems. I'm pretty certain I can't overcome them on my own, but with my network behind me, whole different ballgame. So to give you a practical example, I wrote my first book 3 months ago, the original manuscript, and it's now going into editing, and I don't think I've spent over $100 on that. And most people are thinking, wow, at least $1,000. 10,000, whatever, to get a book published and edited and professionally reviewed and all that kind of stuff. None of that has happened to me. So I want to share with you today 3 secrets, right? These are the 3 secrets of networking and marketing intentionally that I think are the most important. There's more to it than this. That's what the 6-week coaching program is for. But I'm going to share you with these and give you some examples and stories of how I've adapted and overcome my mistakes with them. So the first thing you see up there is how to start networking and branding to get short-term and long-term results. Then we're going to cover how we acquire unpaid sales staff and make sales even when we're not in the room, and sometimes not even in the country. And how do we get leads and sales from activities that have nothing to do with selling? Okay, so those are the 3 secrets of what I do, and they work to this day. Promise you, I can't pinpoint the route and show you the exact process. I just know it works. It's worked too many times for it not to be the case. Okay, so how do we start networking and branding to get short-term and long-term results, right? And the first thing you'll see up there is frequency. So you have to think of yourself in this case as kind of like a radio or TV ad. You're going to have to keep showing up. And I don't mean showing up 7 days a week, 21 times a day, but I am talking about picking groups that you want to be a part of, and you've got to be there. And you've got to be there a little bit early, and you've got to leave a little bit late. And there's a whole bunch of detail that goes into that. But suffice it to say, you want to be there, and then while you're there, you want to be branding, and you want to be branding yourself more than your business, more than your product or service. You want to start making and this is not, getting out there and being braggadocious or anything. This is getting out there and letting people experience you, letting people get close to you, letting them feel out who you are and understand how you think, and see your sense of humor, and figure out what's important to you, and letting them adjust to that over a period of time. I included these 3 questions you'll see below there because I believe that if you haven't done this before, this is probably the best thing I could have used when I started. If somebody had told me this the first day that I went to a networking meeting, it would have saved me so much trouble. These 3 questions: what's working for you lately, what's not working for you lately, and what are you looking forward to? If you can ask those questions or variations of them, understand, if you can ask, I don't necessarily have to use those words, but I've said sometimes, oh, okay, so you're in this kind of business, okay? Well, how's that going? What's really hopping for you lately? Where are you seeing the majority of your business come from right now? That's the first question. The second one, what's not working for you lately? Now that one gets them going. I promise you. People say, oh gosh, I got these administrative headaches. I got payroll. I can't meet these deadlines. I've got this debt I've got to get rid of. They'll talk about it, right? And the last one, what are you looking forward to, is a little bit more personal, but it gives people an opportunity to say, I'm going to Hawaii for 3 weeks. I can't wait. I'm doing, my kids are graduating high school this year. We're going on a trip. It runs the gamut. But I've asked these questions enough times of enough people to know that if you don't want to go into networking and be salesy and be pushy and end up with a bunch of people blacklisting you, these 3 are the most useful tools I've ever come across for doing that, and just being authentic right from the get-go. So I got a couple stories that go along with this. Frequency and branding. Back to that for a minute. I don't know if she's on the webinar. She might see this at some point. But a good friend of mine, you should know, a lady by the name of Sarah Younger, became something of a protege, I use the term loosely, to me, when I started teaching this course. She took it and ran with it. And the backstory was, she had been doing business, at the time she was doing multi-level marketing through Enagic, the water filtration system. And she'd been going about 6 months, and she told me later that she was on the verge of giving up. She had been coming to networking groups and holding presentations and talking nonstop about water, and she was not seeing the results she was hoping for. And part of that presentation, which is now part of the masterclass, I advised her, you need to allow some networking groups, you need to allow about eight months to almost a year. Not that it takes people in those groups 8 to 12 months to feel comfortable with you, but it takes you 8 to 12 months to figure out what makes them tick, what's important to them. First, you got to shed the whole "it's all about me" thing, and then you've got to take the time and make the effort necessary and seize the initiative to meet with those people and to learn what's important to them, to learn about their hobbies and interests and pastimes and boards they serve on and activities they're in the community. Because then when you understand that, you can start acting as a hub. You can start acting as something entirely separate from what your occupation is. You start becoming an asset and a resource to them. And that's why I told her, keep going, because sometimes it can take longer than you expect it to. Other groups, you walk right into it, 3 weeks later, you're getting business out of it. No problem. It just depends on the group. But my point is, very often you need to allow that time, and you need to keep hands off the selling, hands off the pushing, hands off the product pushing, and stay focused on becoming an asset to the other people in that group. So that's one little story. The other little story I have, this is feedback I got about me. I have a client, a friend by the name of Tiana Kleinhoff, and she has a property management slash HOA management business here in town. We got to know each other through the same networking group, and I scheduled a one-on-one with her, and we went and had coffee, and she said, I have to ask you a question. How are you in 10 networking groups a week? And I said, I'm not. I don't have that kind of time. There is no way I'm in 10 networking groups a week. And she said, well, look, I looked up these groups on Facebook, and I went to these groups, and in every single one of them, they say, oh, yeah, Paul Edwards is part of this group. Paul Edwards is in this group. And then if I look him up in Facebook, your face is the one that comes up inside him. And I'm like, well, that's great. I guess I'm a part of groups. I didn't know I was a part of them, because I was only doing 2 groups a week at the time. But I realized that what I'd been doing, the steps that I cover more in depth in the masterclass, but these fundamental principles, I had saturated the market to the degree that there were people in all of these groups who thought I was in them, and I wasn't in them. But they associated me with being in them because whether they're actually meeting me at a group or they're checking their news feed on Facebook, they see my face. And that's what you want to achieve. I think more than even brand recognition for your product is brand recognition of you, right? So we've covered a little bit about networking and branding to get short-term and long-term results. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on getting some unpaid sales staff and make sales even when we're not in the room or in the country. So to follow up with a meeting in networking, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to connect with these people over social media. Good news, somebody gives you a business card, it's not too hard to find them on social media after that. It's not a mystery. There's a search bar if they don't show up automatically. The other part of this is one-on-ones. So I like to describe the networking group as compared to a rocket launch, right? You want that rocket to take off into the sky and create referrals and business and relationships and expand from there. Great, good. So the launch pad for that is the networking group. That is where you go, where everybody else is also coming there to meet people, but it's not where it should stay. So the one-on-one is your next logical step. You meet somebody, you establish a rapport, and you should say, I'd like to sit down and learn more about you and your business. Have you got time next week? Okay, and if they say yes, pull out the calendar. Carry your calendar with you and set it right then, because if you say, here's my card, you take their card, I'll send you an email, you'll forget about it. We all do it. I'm not pointing fingers. It's just the reality of life. We're that busy. We forget it. We brush it to the side. And I've done it too many times to where now I won't do that anymore. If somebody says, I want to meet with you, I say, let's put it on the calendar or I'll forget. Okay? Now, the other half of this is leaders get leads. Okay? So I know people in networking groups who are wonderful people who show up consistently and they get business out of it. So I'm not saying that you have to do this, but I am saying that I think if you choose to serve in a leadership role, I think you're going to see even more out of it than you would if you didn't. Because you're going to be serving in that role where people are coming and talking to you more often because they perceive you as a leader. And the more conversations you have and the more you learn about the more people that you talk to, inevitably, you're going to be able to ping back to people who need things or need to meet people, right? You're going to be able to add value to them that way. So a couple stories to give you examples of this. I have a good friend by the name of Gabriel Toma. You may know him. He works with Woodlawn Funeral Homes here in town. He used to work with Mills & Mills Funeral Homes. And when he and I first met, he'd been in the networking game for a little bit, and he was struggling with it. And so over several conversations, I was able to tell him, Gabe, have you tried this? Have you thought about doing some one-on-ones with people? Have you thought about putting what you do to the side and focusing on being an asset to them? And it's been amazing to watch him over the last couple of years as he's done this more and more. He was very, very good at the one-on-one principle. That really seemed to glom on with him. But he stopped making it all about, have you got your funeral benefits in order? And instead he started adding value to people when he met with them for a one-on-one. So now he's become the president of the Tumwater Chamber of Commerce. And for that chamber has had its difficulties over the past few years, but it's starting to expand and grow. Because I know when my phone rings and I see Gabe's name on there, usually he's calling to ask me a favor that I'm more than willing to do for him. And it's oftentimes he's called me to ask him help with the membership drive and that kind of thing. And because he's got the network and the allies and the people to draw in and expand that membership, it's growing. It's growing, and it's wonderful to see. Tumwater is, of course, growing a lot because of changes in business, and it's getting away from the whole bedroom community too. But, you know, you can't count out the fact that they've got a very well networked and established businessman as the president of their chamber. So another example, if you want somebody that has a little bit longer of a track record, you could look at Madeline White, who owns the Merle Norman in Lacey there. She has been a part of the organizations where she serves for, in some cases, for over 2 decades. And recently was awarded by the National Retail Association. She won an award for community service from their national headquarters in D.C. And she's been president of the Lacey Chamber, and of all the businesses that have come and gone from that little shopping plaza there at Sleater-Kinney, around hers, the neighboring stores and retail outlets and what have you that have been in there, hers is the only one that's still there 13 years after I first got here. And I don't think that's by accident, and I don't think it's because she's hurting for business. I think it's because she understands this principle very well and she uses it masterfully. So the third thing, how do you get leads and sales from activities that have nothing to do with sales? How do we do that? There's a couple of things to this. One of them is what I call, I love this term. I've heard Dave Ramsey use it. It's called happen to you. In his case, he says happen to your money instead of it happening to you. I say the same thing holds true with your network. If you just go to networking groups and you just show up, right, week after week, that's a good start. But if you begin to do things that happen to people, right, in a good way, if you begin to create value for them outside the context of that networking group and outside the immediate context of referrals, you'll be amazed what starts to happen in reciprocation to you. So for the last 4 years, I have organized and hosted and put my energy behind a monthly game of Texas Hold'em that we play at Cigar Daddy's on Lacey Boulevard. We all get together, it's a bunch of businessmen, and we all smoke cigars and play Texas Hold'em and talk a bunch of nonsense. And what I noticed as the group grew from 3 or 4 people to 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 to 16, and now we get 20 people and we have 2 tables full of guys playing. What I've noticed is I overhear business transactions taking place over this card table. These guys are cutting up 1 minute about, oh, you hear about this crazy story in the news the other day, and the next thing they're saying, I need help with what you do. Can you send me an estimate for what you do? We don't advertise it as a networking group. It's not billed as one. We don't charge for it. The only money you pay is the $20 buy-in to play. But the point is, business is done over that table. Now, interestingly enough, this game, the cigar smoke, has kept most of our potential female players away, and I wanted to provide an alternate example. This is organized by my friend Sarah Hendry. She's with State Farm, Melanie Bacala's office. And she organizes this group called WINOs, which stands for Women in Need of Sanity, I think. And they meet at Uncork and Unwind, and it's just a less stinky way to do the same thing, right? So they get together and they're sampling the wines there, and the business profits from that a little bit. But they're also forming relationships and talking business and whatever else they talk about. I don't know. I'm not allowed to go, so I can imagine, though. But the point of that is, both in the cigar game and in WINOs, Sarah and I are employing the same principle. We are happening to our network. We are creating a context that is attractive to whoever, raises their hand and says, yes, I'll come. And that context is taking away from just your day-to-day job, dealing with your family, ordinary networking group, it's in a class by itself. And that's what I mean when I say happen to your network. The other thing is work on stuff that has nothing to do with business, the nonprofit kind of stuff. So this is one of the best stories I have from this. 2015, beginning of 2015, I was at the Lewis County Business Showcase in Chehalis. I was hosting a table there, standing in a group of about 10 people, and the topic was public speaking. And I was the last one to speak. 9 out of these 10 people, I'm the last one, all said, I hate public speaking. I hate it. I'm terrified of getting up on stage. I don't want to go anywhere near it. But as you can tell, I don't have a problem with it at all. In fact, I love it. And I said, I love public speaking. I love it. I think it's great. And as soon as I said that, a hand right next to me grabbed my wrist and said, great, you're going to go up and take care of the raffle prizes for the rest of the day. So that hand belonged to Melinda Wilkes, who owns Mrs. Clean Janitorial, a good friend of mine. And I was happy. I went up on stage, and that gives me added exposure. So now everybody's eyes and ears are on me every time I pick up the mic. And yeah, I do the raffling, but I also get to ad lib and joke around while I'm up there. And so, you know, we had a good time, and the day went on, and then I just thought nothing more of it after that. 3 weeks later, I look down at my phone, and I've got a message from Melinda. Would you be interested in emceeing the Miss Lewis County pageant? And I said, sure. I knew nothing about Miss America. I knew nothing about hosting a pageant, but I knew it's a chance to get up and be in front of a microphone, and I love doing that. So I replied without hesitation, yes. And coincidentally, I'm right in my fourth time now as MC. We're right in the middle of the pageant is this Saturday. And I love doing it. It's always a kick. I get to take a nice James Bond style picture because they get a donated tuxedo, so I get dressed up in a tux, and there's all these lovely young ladies in evening gowns surrounding me, and we take a picture, and it's all a big brouhaha on Facebook for a couple of days, and everybody loves it. But the deal is, I started doing that. The first year I had one lady as an MC. The next year they changed the female MC, but it was the same face on the male MC. And that female MC ended up becoming my biggest client, who spends gobs of money on insurance through my office. And that's what I mean by, you know, getting sales and reaping rewards out of activities that have nothing to do with selling. You know, I wasn't cold calling. I wasn't, I wasn't spending money on advertising. Nothing. I was just going and being an asset to somebody. And it was around that time, the second part of the slide is where I say uncontrollable. I stopped focusing on goals I couldn't control. And this is a little bit iffy for some people because, you know, for some people that they've got to have a sales goal. You know, we've got to do this amount of business or we go out of business. I understand that. What I found is that I have much more control over my marketing activities, over, you know, how many handwritten notes I do, how many networking groups I go to, how many events I do every quarter, how many one-on-ones I have. And so those became my goals. I started setting goals that I had 100% control over. I can make those things happen. I don't have to worry about whether or not the other person is going to cooperate with it. So anyway, that may or may not apply to your business. But okay, enough with the information. I have a question for you, or a couple of questions. If you were to follow the examples that I set, example number 1, you saturate the marketplace and you brand yourself. And then you begin to get leads and make sales in your sleep, out of state, out of country, not in the room, like in example 2. And then you find your phone ringing and your email ringing, if emails ring, while you're busy, you know, procuring items for an auction or writing a fundraising letter for a charity, an organization that benefits homeless kids, like we saw in example 3. Do you think you could succeed? And you're welcome to raise your hand. We'll see. Do you think you would succeed if you were able to do those 3 things? But I'll continue while I wait for you to raise your hands. How many of you are excited about what I just showed you? And anyone feeling like the guy in the picture? A little bit overwhelmed because of all the stuff we've covered.
Roger says he's unsure. Sarah's asking you to repeat the question.
So the question is, if you were to follow the examples I showed you in secret number 1, and you saturate the marketplace with your presence, and then you begin to make sales, get leads and make sales while you're not even physically present, covered in secret number 2. And then you found your phone ringing and your email chiming with new business while you're playing golf for charity or procuring items for an auction like we saw in secret number 3. Do you think you could succeed? That's the question.
Getting some yeses. People are saying they've had success with this approach in the past.
Excellent. Proof of concept. I love proof of concept. Thank you. If you've had success with that in the past, thank you for saying that. Okay. You can imagine how difficult this would be, though, I think, if I showed you all of the information in a 60-minute presentation. I mean, if I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm the one delivering it. So for that, I've created a special here, a free 6-week masterclass. At the end of this presentation, you're going to get an opportunity to register for it if you want to. Now, would anyone mind if I spend a few minutes just going over what that class involves? Excellent.
Sure, please do.
Thank you. Okay. So, the very first Paul Edwards 6-week masterclass. It's not showing up there. Is it showing up?
Is it the what's covered?
Yeah.
Do one more.
Oh, there we go. That's right, the animation. I completely forgot I'd added the animation in there. Okay. So, here's what we're going to cover in the 6-week masterclass. We're going to have a saturation strategy. We're going to talk about becoming everywhere through social media. We're going to talk about creating an authentic brand, conversational authority, pathways and pitfalls of leadership, and how to happen to your network. Okay? That's what we're going to cover. Who's this for? New entrepreneurs and professionals, and experienced and seasoned veterans. So, in other words, everybody on this call, including me. Oops, I hit it. Okay, there we go. Now, you might be thinking time is short, and I don't blame you. 6 weeks sounds like a long time, but I want you to understand, if you look back at the slide that shows what you get, we're actually talking about a total of 8 hours here. 8 hours, 6 hours of instruction broken into 1 hour each, and then 2 conference calls of 60 minutes or less about social media. That's what we're talking about. And those are, we can do, those are group calls. So everybody, as many people as can be on them, can be on them. But I just want you to understand, we're not talking about, 5 nights a week, intensive, just going full throttle at it. We're talking about 1 hour a week, presenting, educating in a classroom, kind of, not a classroom, but in a person-to-person, face-to-face setting, which will be recorded as well. So if you can't make it, you can still get the materials that way. And then an hour on the phone, 2 hours on the phone, not back-to-back, but separately. So just want you to understand, we're not talking about a huge commitment of time. Now, here's what you get. So there's the 6-week masterclass, right? Value there is just under $1,000. The 2 social media calls, just under $200 worth there. You get to access the Marketer Summit Facebook group, which I've been putting together, and that's going to include not just me, but my brain trust. So there's going to be plenty of brain power behind this, helping you navigate this and figure out effective ways to do it. And then as a bonus, the Marketing Intentionally goal setting sheet. This is something I actually have on a grand scale in my office. I have a big whiteboard, and it helps me to remember how to set goals so that I do this effectively. And that's a bonus. We usually do that separately, but with this group, with this particular class, we're including it. The total value is just under $1,600, as you see, but only if you sign up today. So Oops, I lost my notes here. Just give me a sec. Okay, so when you sign up, you're going to get instant access to the 6-week masterclass, and including the courses on saturation strategy and becoming everywhere on social media, right? Armed with this, what we're going to do is we're going to preserve your time, not waste it. We're going to teach you how to be in more places than one at the same time, so that you do begin to multiply those leads and you do begin to multiply those sales without really trying, right? So you don't have to go to every single networking meeting there is, and you don't have to be all over town every day, all day, exhausted by the end of it. When I was first networking, I drove my family nuts and drove my car into old age by doing that. That's exactly what led me to say there's got to be a less time-consuming way to do this. I'm spending so much time on the road and at these events and at all these functions and all these lunches and all that, so I've got to be able to do more with less. Some people get a little bit nervous about social media. They think, oh, he's encouraging me to waste time on it. I'm talking about 30 minutes a day at the most. And I'm not talking about a straight period of 30 minutes, though you can do that if you want to. I do mine interspersing. I take 5 minutes here and just, go through it and do what I do. Sometimes I'll take a little longer, depends on how much time I have in the schedule. When you invest today, you're also going to get access to my Marketers Summit Facebook group. Okay, and that's going to get you tied in with, it's a great place to ask questions and share success stories, to get ideas, and to interact with other people who think like I do and who have the same abilities with networking and marketing and promotions. A mistake far too many people make in business is going it alone. That's advantageous if you want to play your cards close to your chest and you don't want your competitors knowing what you're up to, but it also means that plans fail for lack of advisors. But with many advisors, they succeed. Now, when you sign up for the course, you get 12 months of free access to this group. So even though the course is done after 6 weeks, you're in it for the next 12 months. Okay, so that's a bonus. You can always turn back to it and talk to the people in there and share ideas and get feedback and share successes and also failure stories. Those are more valuable than you might think. I mean, I've been sharing them with you up until now. So, okay, so a couple quick questions. This course is free, as you heard me mention. But I want to ask you, if I did charge you $1,588 for the whole thing, and all you got out of it was long-term and short-term results from networking, would that be worth it? Would that be worth $1,588? You may answer now. Okay. All right. You don't have to answer. This is for you, not me, right? If all this course did was get you unpaid sales staff, people selling for you that you don't have to pay, and they recommended you and referred you while you're vacationing in Laos, would that be worth $1,588? Say yes. Good. Yeah. And if all it did was start to get you sales from activities that have nothing to do with selling, would it be worth $1,588? Say yes. Okay. So I had two choices here. I could be very audacious and come out and ask for $1,588. But that goes against something I believe about the way I would make this purchasing decision, because many of you don't know me. This is your first time meeting me. And there's not necessarily anything to look at and say, other than my word and what a few other people might say, that would say, oh yeah, I definitely pay $1,588 for this. And that's why I'm telling you, I don't want your money for this. Not yet, anyway. We can talk about that. If you get to the end of this and you say, this is valuable and I want this guy coaching me on an ongoing basis, then we can talk about that. But for right now, the most I want is for you to join the course, which you'll have a link to at the end, for you to answer one particular question that I ask And if at the end of it you like what you got and it's helped you and benefited you, I would just appreciate a testimonial. I want to work for free, because if I work for free and you start to get value from it, then it becomes valuable to other people. Also, don't forget, you got a 30-day money-back guarantee. You invest nothing, you get back nothing, you lose nothing. So, I mean, this is my funny way of saying you got nothing to lose, but everything to gain from this. And don't forget, we're also, that last part, the goal sheet that I've created, we don't normally include that with this. So you'll get that, and you can use it. You can make copies of it. You can use it over and over and over again until it's in here and you can't get it out. And you just know automatically, I've got to do this and this and this and this, and success will come. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to move on here. What do I do next? Subscribe to my email list. We have email addresses, so I can send you an opt-in. You're, of course, free to ignore it if you want to, but if you want to be on my email list, please opt in as soon as you get that email. Connect with me over social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. I am on Twitter. I don't get on there much, but Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, I'm on there quite a bit. And join the class. Also, I recommend joining local networking groups. South Sound Connections is a great one, so is the InTeam, and all three chambers of commerce have great networking opportunities to take advantage of. I see we've got a couple of questions here. I have not scheduled an official date. Once I have the registration filled up, that's when it'll start to be more concrete. Did we have any other questions besides that?
Oh, yeah, it's LOL. Sarah thinks you're funny.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I had a feeling Sarah might show up. She wasn't here earlier, though, when I was really buttering her up, so she's going to have to watch the replay.
She logged on about 30 seconds before that. It was perfect timing, actually.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then her ears must have been burning or something. Anyway, okay, so last on here is, you got to click on the screen again so I can. Here's the link. So if you want to be a part of this, follow that link. It'll take you straight through to the registration page. You can answer the question, provide your name and information, and then we will go from there. And as soon as I've filled it up and we've got people ready to go, we'll figure out a time. We'll figure out times and days that work for everybody's schedule. And in the meantime, if you have any feedback or you'd like to contact me, that's my unofficial email, edsvoices@yahoo.com. It's a much more direct route to reach me. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for watching. And I will be back on the webinar, I think, in May. I think we're covering social media at that time.
Yeah.
So.
And just to clarify, this is going to be an in-person masterclass, right? Somebody said, are they being held via webinar?
They will be in person. We will also film them. So if you can't make it, it's okay. We'll capture the material, and if you're part of the class, then you get access to it. And
Chelsea, you had a question a little bit earlier about, let me go back up to find that. So I just wanted to make sure address the amount of time that's required to complete deals in government contracting. This doesn't seem directly applicable to government contracting. And definitely when you're talking about government buyers, there's a whole, there are some things that networking could do, especially when you're talking about those purchase card level buys, under $3,500, then you are kind of selling to a person. However, do those people go to networking opportunities? I don't know.
They do.
Do they?
I will interrupt here for just a moment to say I know exactly who is in the middle of starting up a business right now that consults to people who want to do business with the government to obtain those contracts. And the reason I know that person is because I network.
And also and then when we're talking about those bigger contracts, there's definitely a process. And Chelsea, have you ever worked with PTAC right here with the Women's Business Center? We have a kind of a partner organization called PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which I think the person Paul's referring to actually used to be on our staff, if I'm thinking of the right person. And it's a free resource for anybody who, oh good, you want to work with them, or you already work with them. Free resource for any small businesses who want to do business with the government at any level, whether it's a federal, state, local, cities, things like that. There is a resource in there statewide. They're nationwide, actually, and I'll include their contact information in case anybody else is interested in connecting with them. But I'm glad that you work with them already, Chelsea.
And thanks for mentioning that, Chelsea, because the other thing I want to say is you're absolutely right. Government employees and decision makers have a totally different motive than a business owner you meet in a networking context. The profit motive versus the power motive or the bureaucracy motive are different things. And to be honest with you, I really couldn't speak to it. But I can say, as I mentioned, that I meet people who do business with the government frequently in networking. And I meet people who are in government. In fact, I insure many public officials by virtue of the fact that I get around town and stay on the networking circuit. So I say that to say that you may not necessarily rub shoulders with the purchasing decision maker at the State Department of whatever, but that you may run into ranking politicians, people who are close to them, people who are in leadership positions. That's what I do at my cigar game. I play poker with the Thurston County Treasurer and the Mayor of Lacey and City Councilman. So there's more than one way to skin a cat through this, but you're right. There's a very different motive there, and those people do not normally traffic networking groups. So.
All right. Well, I think that's, unless you had anything else, that's all we had for you today. Thank you all for joining us, spending your time. I will be sending out the slides and the recording later this afternoon to all of you. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to Paul or myself. We will all include his contact information in the email as well. And you
please send me your feedback.
Yeah.
I need as much feedback as I can get. Thank you. And if it's constructive criticism, I can take it.
Yes, there will be a survey as well. Please fill that out. I really do read those and take those seriously. So, but have a great rest of your Wednesday, everybody, and a great rest of your week.
Thank you.